Europeans, like most other global citizens, enjoy broad travel freedoms thanks to their powerful passports. From the beaches of Southeast Asia to the bustling metropolises of North America, European tourists, workers, and expatriates are generally welcomed across the globe. However, there are still a few places where entry is either heavily restricted or outright denied for Europeans. This could be due to political tensions, historical conflicts, or specific national policies aimed at limiting Western influence. In this video, we explore the 10 countries where Europeans face significant challenges when trying to enter, either legally, or in some cases, at all. 1. North Korea. North Korea is infamous for its isolationist policies and strict control over its borders. For most of the world, including Europeans, entering North Korea requires a heavily monitored, state-sanctioned tour. While North Korea hasn't imposed an outright ban on European citizens, their entry is highly restricted and only possible through tightly regulated official tour groups. Additionally, once inside the country, European visitors are constantly monitored by government-approved guides, and any interaction with locals outside of the official itinerary is forbidden. In recent years, due to rising tensions between North Korea and the West, restrictions have become even more severe, with the North Korean government discouraging tourists from Europe by complicating visa processes and increasing surveillance measures. However, even if you do manage to gain access, your every move will be closely watched, and any deviation from the official script could result in dire consequences. 2. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, while slowly opening its doors to global tourism, remains a country where entry for Europeans is still highly regulated. Until 2019, the country did not offer tourist visas, and it was nearly impossible for any non-Muslim European to visit unless they had a specific reason, such as business or pilgrimage during Hajj or Umrah. Even now, although the country has introduced a more lenient visa policy aimed at promoting tourism under Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's Vision 2030 initiative, restrictions remain in place. Certain areas of the country, particularly holy cities such as Mecca and Medina, are entirely off-limits to non-Muslims, regardless of their nationality. While European travelers can now visit Saudi Arabia, the kingdom maintains strict regulations on behavior, dress, and interaction with locals, and violations can result in harsh penalties, making it one of the more restrictive countries for European visitors. 3. Iran. Iran is another country where Europeans may face difficulties when attempting to visit, particularly due to strained diplomatic relations with various European nations. While Iran does not officially ban European tourists, obtaining a visa can be a challenging and lengthy process, often resulting in rejection. Political tensions between Iran and several European countries have led to reciprocal measures, with Iran imposing entry restrictions on nationals from certain European nations. Even if a European citizen is granted a visa, their movement within the country may be restricted, and they are often subject to closer scrutiny from the authorities. Furthermore, European citizens may face additional challenges due to Iran's conservative laws on clothing, alcohol consumption, and social interactions, which must be strictly followed to avoid penalties. Over the past few years, relations between Iran and the European Union have fluctuated, leading to unpredictable visa policies and entry restrictions. 4. Afghanistan. Afghanistan, a nation embroiled in conflict for decades, remains an extremely dangerous and inaccessible destination for Europeans. Following the withdrawal of NATO forces and the subsequent takeover by the Taliban in 2021, European governments strongly advise against all travel to the country. While the Taliban regime has not officially banned European visitors, the lack of a functioning, stable government means that entry into Afghanistan for Europeans is extremely difficult. Many European nations, particularly those involved in the NATO mission, have suspended diplomatic relations with the Taliban regime, making it impossible for their citizens to receive consular assistance if needed. Even if entry is granted, Afghanistan remains an unpredictable and dangerous environment due to ongoing conflicts, the risk of kidnapping, and terrorist activity. For Europeans, especially those with any ties to military or humanitarian efforts in the country, entering Afghanistan is not just discouraged, it's life-threatening. 5. Libya. Libya, another country ravaged by years of civil war, is a no-go zone for Europeans. Since the fall of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, Libya has been plagued by political instability, violent conflicts between rival factions, and the presence of extremist groups. As a result, most European governments have issued travel bans or severe travel warnings for their citizens. In many cases, European travelers attempting to enter Libya will be turned away at the border due to the lack of a functioning, internationally recognized government. Even humanitarian organizations and journalists face significant challenges when attempting to gain entry to the country. For those who do manage to enter Libya, the threat of violence, kidnapping, and terrorism is constant. Furthermore, European visitors are viewed with suspicion by some factions, due to Europe's involvement in the NATO-led intervention during the Libyan civil war. For these reasons, Libya remains a country where Europeans are effectively barred from entry. 6. Syria. Syria is another war-torn country that has become virtually inaccessible to Europeans due to years of civil conflict. Although the Syrian government has not officially banned Europeans, ongoing instability, the presence of extremist groups, and widespread destruction make travel to Syria extremely dangerous. European governments strongly discourage any travel to Syria and have cut diplomatic ties with the Assad regime, making it impossible for their citizens to receive consular support while in the country. Even if Europeans could gain entry, they would be entering a country where infrastructure has been decimated, basic services are severely limited, and violence is still an ever-present threat. Syria remains one of the most dangerous and volatile countries in the world, and for Europeans, any attempt to visit would be fraught with significant risk. 7. Yemen. Yemen, embroiled in one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, is another country where Europeans are effectively barred from entry. Years of conflict between Houthi rebels and the Yemeni government, along with frequent airstrikes, have devastated the country. As a result, European governments have issued strict travel warnings advising their citizens to avoid all travel to Yemen. The situation on the ground is so dire that many European countries no longer have functioning embassies in Yemen, and any attempts to enter the country would leave Europeans without consular support. Even humanitarian workers face extreme challenges when trying to gain access to Yemen. Those who do manage to enter the country are at significant risk of violence, kidnapping, and disease. For European tourists, Yemen is not only a dangerous destination, it's essentially off-limits, with the ongoing conflict making it one of the most perilous places in the world. 8. Bhutan. Bhutan is a unique case on this list. Unlike the war-torn countries mentioned earlier, Bhutan is a peaceful and stable nation. However, the country follows a strict policy of high-value, low-impact tourism, which makes it extremely difficult for Europeans, and indeed, most foreign nationals, to visit. To preserve its culture, environment, and traditional way of life, Bhutan limits the number of tourists allowed into the country each year. All visitors, including Europeans, must pay a daily fee ranging from $200 to $250, which covers accommodation, food, and a licensed tour guide. Independent travel is not allowed, and all tourists must be part of an official tour group. While Bhutan has not imposed an outright ban on Europeans, these strict regulations and high costs make it a difficult destination for budget-conscious travelers. The country's government is very selective about who they allow into the country, which effectively limits European access to those willing to pay a premium for the privilege. 9. Somalia. Somalia, a country plagued by decades of conflict, piracy, and terrorism, is one of the most dangerous places in the world for European visitors. Although Somalia has not officially banned European nationals, the extreme risk of kidnapping, terrorist attacks, and violent crime makes it a no-go zone for travelers. Many European governments have issued strict travel warnings advising against all travel to Somalia, citing the lack of security and the absence of a functioning government in many parts of the country. Furthermore, Europeans are often viewed with suspicion by local militias and terrorist groups such as Al-Shabaab, which increases the risk of targeted attacks. For those Europeans who do manage to enter Somalia, the risks are immense, with very limited access to medical care, safe accommodation, and consular support. Somalia's ongoing instability and the presence of extremist groups make it one of the most dangerous places in the world for European visitors. 10. Eritrea. Eritrea is one of the most secretive and isolated countries in the world, with a government that closely controls who is allowed to enter. While European citizens can technically obtain visas to visit Eritrea, the process is long, difficult, and often results in denial without explanation. Once inside the country, Europeans are subject to strict regulations on where they can travel, and they are often required to have a government-appointed guide with them at all times. Eritrea's repressive regime tightly controls information and movement within the country, and Europeans are often viewed with suspicion by the government. Furthermore, Eritrea has strained diplomatic relations with many European nations, particularly those that have criticized its human rights record. This has led to reciprocal restrictions on entry, with European visitors facing significant challenges when attempting to visit the country. While not officially banned, Eritrea remains one of the most difficult countries for Europeans to access. These 10 countries, each with their own unique reasons, present significant challenges for Europeans wishing to visit. Whether due to political tensions, war, or strict national policies, these destinations remain largely inaccessible to Europeans. Some, like North Korea and Bhutan, limit access through strict government controls, while others, like Afghanistan and Somalia, are simply too dangerous to visit. As the global political landscape continues to shift, so too may the travel restrictions imposed on Europeans. However, for now, these 10 countries stand as some of the most difficult, and, in some cases, impossible, places for Europeans to explore.